I kind of want to talk about, I guess, some of the things that I do as a caregiver that has helped me.
Perfect.
I would do like annual reviews of my life and set themes and things like that. But then a friend suggested I like look at my life in decades and see what the themes are like in each decade.
Man, I'm having
And
like a woo moment right now. I've never thought to do that.
yeah, and it's such a powerful like reflection technique. And
Totally.
so so that was like extreme caregiving for so many people in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Um, but that was also the decade that I started learning and like incorporating different like tools and building my foundation of support. Um, so yeah, that's what I want to share, where like the
Love it.
different ways that in that decade of um, like extreme caregiving, what has helped me. Um,
Okay.
and so the three things come to mind for me. Um, so the first is
Welcome to Miraculous Transformations, conversations about powerful practices that create powerful transformations. Join me as I delve into stories of change and explore the tools and practices that have helped people navigate their paths. You might just find some you'd like to try yourself. So, let me say thank you so much for coming and having this conversation with me. And will you please introduce yourself?
sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Terrence Ho, and I am based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Cool. And can you give us like a couple of highlight points about yourself?
Sure. Um, so I would say a big part of, or had been a part of my identity, is one as a caregiver, so a family caregiver. Notably, for my younger brother, Torrance. Yeah, I'm Terrence and he's Torrance.
Oh,
Everyone
nice.
mixes this up. Uh, he was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy at the age of 6. So at an earlier age for me, around like 10, I already became a sibling caregiver.
Wow.
So that was someone I cared for at a young age. And then later in life, I had a grandfather who was aging. So I also provided care for him. Um, and then we had a family friend who used to be my brother's personal support worker for many years. And then because she had no family and country, I became her caregiver and power of attorney for personal care. And then the last person that I cared for was our mom. Her name is Mimi, and she was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer back in 2019. So I cared for her from her diagnosis until she died. So I had a huge variety of caregiving experience in my life. Even though my background in terms of academic background and professional background is in business and technology, a lot of my caregiving experience influenced me in the career that I have now. Um, so now I work in the assistive technology and wheelchair industry for the last 10 years because of my experience as a caregiver.
Yeah.
Um, and I've also did a lot of training in skilling up for myself to be a better carer. Part of it is for me to feel like I'm in control.
Okay.
So doing a lot of training, for example, in mental health first aid, because both my mom and my brother displayed like signs of suicidal depression and suicidal ideation. And because our family has had a history of deaths by suicide,
Mhm.
both my grandma and my mom's brother, my uncle, both died of suicide. So I trained for first aid mental health. I did suicide prevention training. Um, I I've been trained as a end of life care doula um,
Okay.
because of what's been happening in hospice training. So I've done a lot of these training really to feel like I'm in control when caregiving is a role that really we're not in control of. We're not in control of when my brother is suffering or when my mom is suffering in the progression of their illnesses. So yeah, so I've been trained in all these different ways, and I would say yeah, a lot of my caregiving of the people I cared for has influenced who I am today and the things I do now.
Yeah, that is
So,
amazing. What deep work you've done, it sounds like. And this idea of the illusion of control. I think that doing those trainings so that you can feel like you have controls probably sounds like it taught you that, you to one of the things that I teach in my mindfulness students is about controlling the controllables. And the controllables are usually things in here, right? Like
mhm.
we can control our own response to things. We can
Yes.
control how we show up and things like that. And we have to let go of the idea that we can control somebody else's reaction to the world or even somebody else's path, which is so hard, especially, I just shared right before we started this conversation that I've just entered into a caregiving situation myself, and
Mhm.
it's very challenging when you have a certain way that you live your life and you think that things are supposed to be done, and you maybe feel like you're witnessing somebody do something that could be detrimental to their health or and you're caring for them and you just want to fix it.
Mhm.
And that letting go piece of like allowing someone to have their own path and trusting that is really hard.
Yes, yes, yes. And from my experience is that when I was witnessing the progression of my mom and my brother, my own fears start to surface.
Oh, yeah.
The fears of, wow, like their health is declining and I can't do anything about it. And that is so scary. And then what happens is then the next piece is then my own projections of like, oh, you need to be doing this or you need to be doing that because of my own fears.
Hmm.
And then so that's why I found, at least to some extent, the doula training was really helpful because it
Okay.
also then taught me what is within our control in the face of death.
Okay.
Where then it's like things like, okay, well, we could do, at least in Canada, it's called advanced care planning. I think in the
Okay.
US, it's called living wills,
Yeah.
where
Okay.
I was able to sit down with my mom and my brother and like talk about, oh, okay, so what are their wishes when they're going through this, like when the start of like say like the palliative care stage leading into like hospice and or like end of life.
Mm.
Um, and then to me, then it gave us a conversation of like what's within our control when
Okay.
things feel like they're not in control. And that gave me a sense of like, okay, so now I know their wishes. I could execute and honor what their wishes are. And so that was to me a very valuable piece of the doula training that gave me a sense of like, okay, that's something that's within my control with them,
Okay.
both my
Okay.
mom and my brother. Um, and then the other piece is also, and this is something that I'm going through right now, since my brother's death was quite recent. Literally today is 3 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Um,
Mm.
and doing a lot of the legacy planning as well. And to have
What is
talked to
that?
legacy planning.
Mhm.
So legacy planning is thinking about like what does a person want to kind of like leave behind.
Okay.
And sometimes that work could start before their death. But in terms of, for example, with my brother, because he actually almost died like 6 years ago, we had that conversation already in terms of like, oh, what does legacy look like, um, and what he wants to kind of leave behind, and um, and so the work has already kind of started, like
Okay.
when he almost died 6 years ago,
Okay.
where after he kind of came back from almost dying, he created his own TikTok channel and YouTube channel, and this is his artwork.
Oh, cool.
So being able to like honor him and his art creation, um, and yeah, like he has a TikTok following of like almost 90,000 followers. Like,
Oh, okay.
and so to me, I felt like he already started his legacy work before his death, and then now I'm just continuing his like legacy. Um, and we also or I also created like a fund through a foundation to honor both our mom and my brother. So I just established it at the end of December called the Mimi, Torrance, and Terrence Family Fund. This would honor the values, the passions, and the interests of both what our mom and my brother shared. And I'm just going to continue to yeah, honor their memories through this fund. Yeah,
That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing all that.
no, you're welcome.
All right. Well, so in terms of our miraculous transformations conversation, what did you think of that you would like to share?
I kind of want to talk about, I guess, some of the things that I do as a caregiver that has helped me.
Perfect.
So I guess like take like maybe one step back and like a bigger level. I did like a kind of like a decade review of my life over the decades. Because
Okay.
I would do like annual reviews of my life and set themes and things like that. But then a friend suggested I like look at my life in decades and see what the themes are like in each decade.
Man, I'm having
And
like a woo moment right now. I've never thought to do that.
yeah, and it's such a powerful like reflection technique. And
Totally.
so when I did it, I was like, okay, so like the first 10 years of my life, it was like this like carefree theme because like I was like, yeah, our family did immigrate to Canada at the time, but for the most part, my theme was carefree.
Okay.
The second decade of my life from like 11 or like 10 to 20, that was chaos for me. So the theme was chaos because my brother got his diagnosis. Um, like our parents was starting the process of divorce and like there's like
Mm,
so much like upheaval and uncertainty. Um, and then my 20s to 30s was kind of like figuring things out. So that was kind of the theme because, yeah, it was like I was ending university, starting a new relationship, but then also providing care support to my family. So there was like just trying to figure things out. Um, and then my 30s and 40s, the theme is extreme caregiving
okay. Yeah.
because that was the decade where my brother almost died the first time. Our mom got her cancer diagnosis. Our family friend also got her dementia diagnosis. Our grandpa died. And so that was like extreme caregiving for so many people in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Um, but that was also the decade that I started learning and like incorporating different like tools and building my foundation of support. Um, So yeah, that's what I want to share, where like the
Love it.
different ways that in that decade of um like extreme caregiving, what has helped me. Um
Okay.
and so the three things come to mind for me. Um so the first is um having a consistent like circle of support.
Mm.
So I would say at the end of the last decade and the beginning of that decade of extreme caregiving, I was introduced to a men's support circle.
Okay.
And to me, that was extremely valuable because growing up without many healthy masculine role models, being invited by actually a buddy of mine from high school invited me to this men's support circle. And I remember after the first session, I said, because they asked for feedback, I was like, where have you been all my life?
Oh, wow.
Because the men, and these are men of all ages, like from their 20s to their like 70s, all sitting and creating safe spaces for men to like share their emotions, talk about difficult things, have a safe space to practice how to like speak authentically. And I spent, and then from that experience, I spent like a decade in men's circles and having the safe space to, as a man, to be able to model after other men and then to also feel safe enough to experiment how to be my authentic self was game changing. Because that shifted my relationship with myself, my relationship with the emotions that I feel. This then translated into my relationship with my family, with my friends, with my colleagues. just because I was able to connect and be in relationship with myself in a healthy masculine way.
I love the realization of that. I mean, I've had that same experience that working on my relationship with myself ripples out into all my other relationships as a natural byproduct. Like
Yeah,
you don't necessarily even have to try, it just starts to happen. Of course, you have to put effort in once things start to unfold, but I do think that that's such a valuable, just natural byproduct of inner self work.
big time, big time. And I really credit the men in these men's circles holding, like creating that space for me. And I've never really had like male figures in my life that not only demonstrates that for me, but then also creating the space and then also challenging me too in
Mm.
a very like safe way. And because of that, I was able to, yeah, just be more in tune with myself as a man and be supported by other men. So yeah, it's like
I
yeah, such a powerful experience for me.
I love the rising up of the popularity of this men's work. I don't know if it's worldwide, but definitely in, the West, there has been, I have a dear friend who is very active in Sacred Sons. Are you familiar with that group?
Oh,
It's a men's work group. From my exposure to him being in Sacred Sons and being active in that and a facilitator of men's work, I've gotten to see how it's popping up and how it's so becoming more and more prevalent. And I think it's so valuable.
absolutely, yeah. And there are not only kind of North American based men's organizations that I know of, but also international ones.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and so from my experience, I was participating in one of them. And then through kind of like my own healing and growth, I then kind of like br like branched out into more co-ed type programs.
Okay.
And then they've been very valuable for me too. And so now instead of like a regular men's circles, I have through these other kind of co-ed programs that I've participated in, I have a like a weekly accountability buddy who I've met with for consistently for the last 5 years.
Oh,
So
cool.
on a weekly basis, we check in with each other, go through our wins and challenges to support each other. And this is so that's valuable. And then the other one is a monthly mastermind like team that I'm part of, also for the last 5 years now. And and so for me, having these consistent touch points where I
Mm.
know that I have a safe space to like talk about anything, celebrate my wins, talk about my challenges, get advice, be challenged, is extremely valuable for me. And especially as a caregiver, where it could be a very isolating like role to play.
Right.
Um, because a lot of times we don't identify as a caregiver, so we don't like seek out like, oh, support for caregivers, even though they
Mhm.
exist
Yeah.
because we're like, well, yeah, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a sister, right? Like, of course, I'm gonna take care of my loved one, but then we don't say like, oh, where do I look for support for me? So, for me, having kind of built some of these foundations of support over the years have been very valuable for me because I didn't go seek out like specific caregiver support. Instead, I already built these foundation support because I knew I wanted it in my own healing in the last like
Yeah, it
decade.
sounds like you had that instinct or that intuitive hit, like to just do that. Just side note, I'm part of an organization called Breathing Spaces, which is
Mm,
exactly what you're saying. It's a caregiver support organization.
mm.
And they have care circles, like online care circles, where they have regular meetings of, just gathering and talking about exactly the type of stuff that you're talking about, but specifically for people who are caregiving. So
That's
there are
awesome.
things like that out there, but I love that you just knew that you needed something like that. It's cool too because it sounds like it's evolved, but the through line is the community. You have a
Correct.
community and a support system.
Correct, yeah. And out of curiosity, that breathing spaces is that virtually and available to anybody?
It is. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. It started locally in the Bay Area of like on the West Coast of the United States in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it started with this woman, Cindy, who had gone through a caregiving journey with her, both of her parents. And she started this group of a walking club. And they would meet up and they would walk and they would once a week or something like that. And they would talk about their caregiving. It was with other people who were caregiving. And it turned into, so they still have some in-person things in different areas, but it's really shifted to online stuff, a lot of virtual stuff. And they have care circles. And then I have a dear friend, well, the wife of the guy who does the men's work, his wife is a death doula, and she does death cafes, or
Yeah,
what
yeah,
does she,
definitely.
do you know death
Yeah,
cafes?
death giving. I've attended several myself. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so they do them in person in Portland, and we've attended several of them. Well, they also travel around and do them, but
Mm.
she does online virtual ones as well.
Okay. Yeah,
And so
that's
they
great
have
to know.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great to know. And we're seeing, I'm definitely seeing more and more, like especially even care organizations, offering this to like caregivers. And when I say caregivers, I mean like family caregivers who are like unpaid
Yeah.
caregivers.
Yep.
More of these type of resources. So at least in Canada, where I'm based, like there's a organization at the federal national level called the Canadian Center for Caregiving Excellence, and they offer like mindfulness and meditation for caregivers. Out in Alberta, which is a province in Canada, their caregiving organizations offer tapping, like
Oh,
the
yeah. Yeah.
gift tapping
Yep.
for caregivers. And then in Ontario, where I'm based, the caregiving organization here offers like free counseling and things like that for caregivers. So, yeah, I think once we identify as a caregiver, we could then also seek out um,
Totally.
support and services that are for caregivers, which helps us better care for our loved ones.
Cool. Okay. So that was
Yeah,
your first thing. Okay.
that's the
What
first thing.
else?
Then the second thing, which I mentioned to you when we first start chatting, is TRE.
Right. Okay.
So this is the tension and trauma release exercise. Um, and I really happened upon this. So prior to this, maybe like a couple months prior, I went to a plant medicine ceremony, and it was actually my first time experiencing with the plant medicine ayahuasca.
Hmm.
And in the ceremony, my intention was to show me what I need to let go of. And essentially the plant got me to tremor for 7 hours.
Whoa. Okay.
Yep. And so I asked the shaman in the middle of the session, I was like, is this normal? And she's like, yeah, this is like absolutely normal. And so I just allowed it to allow my body to tremor for 7 hours. And then a couple months after the ayahuasca ceremony, a friend of mine posted that, oh, I'm attending a TRE workshop in Toronto. And then so I said, "Oh, cool, I'm gonna come with you." I didn't know what it was, but I was like, "This is fascinating." So we both went, and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool. Like, it gets my body to tremor, kind of like what happened in the ayahuasca ceremony."
Yeah.
And so I went to the workshop, we did it. I was like, "This is cool." So I didn't really practice it afterwards, but then a couple months after that, that same friend who was at the workshop said, "Hey, I'm gonna become a practitioner. I'm going through teacher training." I was like, okay, cool. And she's like, oh, I need a guinea pig. So I was like, okay, I'll be your guinea pig. And literally, this was like 2020, um, like a couple months after our mom got her diagnosis
Mm.
and her cancer diagnosis. And it became such a like valuable tool for me in because the practice allows and teaches our body that if we're feeling stressed or tense, feel free to tremor.
Okay.
So kind of like how with our mammal brothers and sisters, like a dog or an antelope or something, like if something like traumatic happens, what's the first thing that they do when they stand up is they shake it off.
They shake it out their tail,
Yeah, they're like
right?
they
Yeah.
would like shake it and then they would then do continue on.
Yeah.
But we lost that ability
Right.
because perhaps when we're growing up we were told, oh, don't shake because that's a sign of weakness or all these different programming that we've been taught at a young age not to shake. Um, TRE reteaches ourselves how to shake. And,
Amazing.
and in the height of caring for my mom, my brother, our family friend in the middle of pandemic, I experienced panic attacks. And TRE really helped me regulate my nervous system in those panic attacks. So I remember there was once in my panic attack, I was like I couldn't breathe and I decided to like call like emergency services and literally right when they said, okay, like the ambulance is on their way, my body relaxed and then I started just tremoring and I felt at ease, even though I was still kind of like in the aftershock of the panic attack, but the TRE kicked in and I just felt at ease.
What a
And
powerful tool.
yeah, such a powerful, powerful tool. It's such a simple tool that we could do anywhere. Like we don't have to like be in any certain poses. Literally, sometimes I'd be driving the car and I'd be like tremoring. Like it's such a simple yet powerful tool to regulate our nervous system.
So, in my understanding, it's a practice of allowing. You're
It
allowing
is.
the tremor. So you're not doing anything to bring the tremor on. You're just allowing the tremor.
Yes. However, there is kind of like these like warm up exercises that you could do to warm up your bodies to then allow our body to start tremoring.
Okay.
However, most of us carry a lot of tension and trauma already
Okay.
that we actually don't need to do these warm-up exercises.
Okay.
Yeah. But in terms of the formal practice, there is kind of these set of warm-up exercises that we do to activate our body to then start the tremoring. Um, Even though it's like allowing our body, and sometimes it could get pretty extreme in like tremoring, that in some sense we are still in control, that if it gets too much, we could like eat like flex our body to then stop. So we are still in
Mm.
control. However, it gives our body the permission that when we're feeling tense or stressed or different emotions arise, we could allow our body to like tremor it out and move that energy.
Okay. And so just to recap, that is called TRE.
Correct. Yeah. So that's the second thing that I found to be like extremely valuable tool, especially during the extreme caregiving experience. And when I say extreme caregiving, this is like almost like very intense caregiving where like every day you're kind of like on high alert.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Because caregiving, there's also like a spectrum of like taking care of someone. Like it could be the things like taking our loved ones to like doctor's appointments and like that kind of stuff where it's like day to day, but perhaps not like super extreme. And then
Okay.
it could be to the extreme where like, wow, like every day we're on edge because we don't know what's going to happen to our loved ones and you're kind of like on high alert. And I felt like for about 6 years, my role was kind of like that because
Oh,
my
that's
brother,
intense.
yeah, my
Yeah.
brother was going through his suicidal ideations, almost dying, started at least in Canada, we call it the medical assistance in dying, which is like assisted suicide in the US. Like,
Yeah.
so there's like a lot of that. And then our mom got her diagnosis, had suicidal ideations, went into depression. So it was like super intense, like caregiving that I had to like go through. And I found that having these tools was extremely valuable, like TRE.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then with the foundation of support that I got from these different like mastermind and accountability and men's circles, yeah, it was super valuable. So then the final uh, thing that proved to be very valuable for me is the practice of gratitude.
Which is how we know each other, right?
Yes,
Essentially.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because Leong on TikTok, we started following each other because we both practice gratitude publicly. Um, and the backstory to this for me is in 2015, so literally like right before I went into extreme caregiving, I was listening to the Tim Ferriss podcast, and he was talking about like habits. And one habit that he shared that resonate with me was like a 5 minute journaling. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's something simple that I could do. And one of the prompts in the 5 minute journal is, what are you grateful for? So I started as part of my own personal like daily habit is I would answer all these questions, including what I'm grateful for today. So I did that starting in 2015. And then the uh, in 2021, so this is about almost like a year and a few months after our mom got her cancer diagnosis, and also coming out of because she spent 4 months in the psych ward for her suicidal depression. Um, January 1st, 2021, I was on a uh, New Year's hike with my buddies. We were out in nature hiking on New Year's Day, and like a voice came to me and said, "Oh, share your gratitude publicly."
Oh my gosh, I did not know that background and I love that. Okay, that is totally up my alley.
So this is now after, yeah, like about 6 years of me just privately like journaling. But
Okay.
on January 1st, 2021, I had a voice that said, share your gratitude publicly. I'm like, okay. Um, so after the hike with my buddies, I said, hey guys, let's just take a picture. And so I took a picture with my buddies and I on our New Year's Day hike, and I posted it publicly. And I said, oh, today I'm grateful that I went on a hike with my buddies on New Year's Day. And what that gave me was a photo documentary of like the last 6 months that I had with our mom
Oh wow. Okay.
of daily gratitudes, because that also included in that 6 months the day that her oncologist said to us, there is no more treatment. You only have like a few weeks or a few months to live.
Oh.
The day that my mom died. And it really forced me to really, in those moments of difficulty as a caregiver, to dig deep to find something that I'm grateful for that day.
That's a that's so powerful, I feel like, because I do feel like it's common for people to say or to feel that it's easy to find gratitude when everything's going well, but to have an example and a model of finding gratitude, even on your hardest day, on the day that you lost your mom, I mean, what a powerful thing to share with the world.
Yeah, it was a huge, like for me, I did it because I was like, well, I want to keep consistent in my gratitude practice, and I found it valuable that I forced myself to
Mm,
dig really deep to find what I'm really grateful for that in that moment, even though I had to, yeah, like make sure my mom was comfortable in her last few days, and witnessing like our family and friends coming during mid-pandemic to be there with our mom and care for her while she was dying. Like those were very difficult moments, and but I really cherish those moments too because
yeah.
I was able to capture our last meal together. Um, like I still remember, yeah, like because I captured that day of gratitude, I still remember that. Yeah, that last meal I had with my brother and my mom is a bowl of wonton. Um, and that was what I was grateful for that day.
Mm.
Um, and so even after she died, I continued that practice. Um, because then my brother and I had to navigate kind of this like new world for ourselves.
Right.
Um, and and yeah, so I continued documenting daily gratitude. It eventually moved into video format because I follow someone by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk, and he talks a lot about video content. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I think this was then in like 2022, I decided to like go into video. And this is actually funny because uh, my brother was the first one to start using TikTok before me. And the story there is that he started producing videos in I think like 2020 or so, after he kind of came out of his almost death experience. So he had been doing his YouTube and Instagram and stuff, but then he got locked out of his YouTube account. I think this was like 2021, and I said to my brother, I'm like, "Oh, why don't you post your videos on TikTok instead, since you don't have access to your YouTube account?" Literally within 3 months of him like mostly reposting his content from YouTube, his account exploded, and that's when he got like 60,000 followers. One video hit like 1 million views within 3 months of him just posting his old content. And so he became like this like mini TikTok like micro celebrity. And so, I saw that my brother was having fun with it. So then I'm like, okay, if Gary Vaynerchuk is saying this and my brother's having a good time, all right, I'll start posting video content too. And so then I transitioned from posting photo of my daily gratitude into video.
Where were you posting the photos?
Mainly on Instagram.
Okay.
Yep.
And do you do the videos? So now you transitioned videos to TikTok. Do you also put the videos on Instagram as well?
Yep. So I
Okay.
posted on most of the different platforms now with the videos. Yep. So yeah, so then I transitioned to videos. And what was really interesting about the video process too is that I started incorporating like my brother into my daily gratitude videos. And my family and friends. And so it's been like such a fun process of, yeah, I'm going to do my day of gratitude. And I also want to know what my family and friends, what they're grateful for that day too. And
Nice.
so what I really cherish too is since my brother's death 3 months ago, I now also have this like video log of the two of us like recording our daily gratitudes together for the last like almost like two years.
Well, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, so now I have this, yeah, like all of these kind of like memories of us sharing our gratitude. Um, yeah, so I'd say this has also been like a powerful tool for me, having been a caregiver for such a long time, uh, as a way to, because as a caregiver, we will experience dark days.
Yeah.
And in those dark days, it's the little practice of gratitude to remind myself, it's like, okay, this was a tough day caring for the person I'm caring for, and I'm still able to find something that like I'm grateful for. Not that I'm negating my emotions around like the sadness, the anger, the frustration. Is more just, hey, I'm going to be grateful for this. And it could be something as simple as I'm grateful that I have a roof over my head, um, and like a shower that I could like take a shower with. And at the same time, I'm still feeling the sadness. I'm still feeling like the frustrations of being a caregiver. So they could both exist. So it's not like toxic positivity. It's
I'm so glad you're bringing that
yeah.
up because I think it's really important to acknowledge that both can exist at the same time.
Yes,
That
exactly.
one does not mean that the other doesn't exist. And
Yeah,
like you said, it's not toxic to look for gratitude in a hard situation because you're not using it to replace the other emotion. You're just acknowledging that they both are existing at the same time.
exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
we live in a complex world,
we
right?
do.
And you there's so much good stuff happening in the world at the same time as lots of hard stuff. And being able to hold those things together, if we can hold them together in ourselves, then we can look out into the world and hold that both can be true in the world as well.
Exactly. And I definitely feel that this practice for me on a daily basis has taught me that
Mm.
I can feel both those things. Yeah, because Yeah, like for me, when I do these and when I share these videos on a daily basis, I'm not doing it. It's actually, I'm doing it for myself. And it's not for anyone else. Yes, it's great that other people follow me and they share their gratitude with me and they tell me, yeah, it's great that you do it. And wow, you like, and but for me, in the end, it's like, oh, I'm just really doing this for myself. Um, yeah.
I think I've noticed that you, or I've seen on a couple of your videos that you put a running count of how many
Mhm,
days you've been doing that. So
mhm.
what day are you on now?
I think yesterday was like 1460.
And is that 1460 of sharing it publicly?
Correct.
And then you
Yes.
were already 6 years into your gratitude practice, you said,
Like
before
in
that?
from 2015.
Yeah,
So
okay.
it's almost 10 years of
Nice.
gratitude practice on a daily basis. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I mean, it's such powerful practices. Okay, so the three powerful practices that you shared. Well, I mean, there's so many things that are embedded within
Mhm.
those three main things, but the three main things you shared were having a community,
Yes.
the TRE,
Mhm.
and TRE, I said that right? And then the
TRE.
gratitude practice.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so awesome. Thank you so much for talking about those things.
Hey, you're welcome. Yeah. I feel like those three tools or ways of like being supported has certainly helped transform me um, as I was going through the caregiving experience. Um, and I guess like coming back kind of full circle to what I said about kind of earlier reflecting on kind of the decade and the themes of each decade. I remember, so the last question my friend had for me was, "Oh, so what does this new decade look like for you?" And
Oh,
this was still, I was still in the process of care for my brother before he died. But what came into my headspace was freedom.
okay.
So this now new decade for me is freedom. Um, and like there's part of me that had been and it's part of my grieving process sad because part of me is like, hey, I want my brother to still be part of this. Yet he died as I was starting kind of this like decade of me experiencing freedom for the
Mm.
first time in my life. So yeah, it's kind of been beautiful and all of these different things in this like life journey of like experiencing life in all these decades with all these different themes and all the learnings I've acquired and experienced through all these decades. And yeah, so I would say that'd be the last tool I'd recommend. Do this kind of like decade review of your life too, and kind of see where you're at. Um, because it's quite insightful. And then asking, it's like, oh, then what is that next decade will look like too?
Yeah, yeah, thank you. I love that one too. Now, when you say decades, do you do your own decade? Like you said, 0 to 10 years old. So it doesn't matter the year.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. All right. I'm trying to think, is there anything? Oh, one thing, if people want to look you up and want to follow your gratitude practice or anything like that, what should they look under and how can they find you?
Sure. I guess an easy place to go to for one place would be my website. So it's terrenceho.com, spelled TerrenceHO.com. And then once you get there, like links to my socials and stuff would be there. So
Okay.
whatever social you prefer, you could just click on those links and yeah, you could learn about more about me through my website.
Perfect. And I'll put that link under this conversation as well. And then
Sure.
let me do a formal thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of this information and for talking with me today. It's been really fun to get to know you better and to hear these powerful practices that I think are really valuable for caregivers, but also just for anybody. And
Mhm.
anybody and everybody can use these practices and these tools for all sorts of reasons.
Mhm. Yeah, you're welcome, Katie. I appreciate you, yeah, inviting me on to your show, and yeah, like I'm so glad that Leon like connected us, and I look forward to getting to know you more as we
Yeah.
continue our regular connections in our community.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, me too.